Hello, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media and tech-related production questions every single day. Cindy Drozda from Erie, Colorado is our reader today. So, Cindy, what's first on our agenda?
Our first one today is from Chris Knobloch in Landstuhl, Germany. I'm looking to project a real-time text translation, closed captioning style, of different event speakers' audio onto a screen for an event audience to see. What Mac-based software, if any, is recommended to accomplish this? Thank you.
And thank you for the question, Chris. Alex Lindsay's going to help you out here. Alex?
Yeah, so it may not be as simple as it seems. I don't actually know what software you would use to do this. Usually we do this with people. There is stuff coming out that is getting better at this translation process, but I don't know of any software that would do it immediately. What we've typically used in the past for this is that we're going to have, and it kind of comes in two parts. We have one person that's doing the translation, and another person that is doing the captioning. And then that goes to a thing called Stream Text, which has a web viewer that you can put up in what we call cart, which is the screens with the text. Now, typically that's captioning, but it can be a translation as well. And I haven't seen software that does that effectively, by itself. So it is that will do it to a screen like that. There are services, for instance, some of the Microsoft services inside of Teams. I think that Zoom has worked on some of this, but I haven't played with it myself. But generally, when we've done this for large audiences, we do that. And one of the reasons for that is it's very hard for someone to type and translate at the same time. So we have we bring those into two parts. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to go, you're in Germany, so if you're trying to come back to English, that's actually easier to find people that can do this. And remember, those people don't have to be local. They can be remote. You can send them an audio feed over whatever you'd like to, and they do it wherever in the world that they make sense. So what you need is if you're going to English, you're going from a German to English translator, the English captioning. If you're going to German, then you'd be going from an English to German. That's harder because of the laws. It is much easier to find an English captioner than a German captioner. Because it's so required in the United States to have English captioners and Spanish captioners. They're very common, whereas in Germany it's not. The company that would do it automatically, and I just don't know if they do it yet or not for this service, would be AI Media. So that's the company you're probably looking for to do that type of service. But I think that we have a couple people in our in office hours that do translation in Europe. They might have a better answer. We'll see if we can reach out to them.
I just have to say it's one of my most enjoyable and frustrating things to watch YouTube with its auto translations turned on, because hearing the English and then watching what the automated system without human intervention comes up with is sometimes really amusing.
The reality is that it's almost impossible to translate from one language to another in a way that everyone's going to agree to. Now, you're talking about things being absurd, but at the same time, there is not a single time that we've done translation where everybody that heard it thought it was the right way to say it. And so there's a couple of different, so you get these complaints. I don't pejorative, but the French are really sensitive about it. Not the French Canadians, but the French are very sensitive about their language. And you will get, when we translate to French, we just know that there's going to be a ton of people upset, and there's nothing we can do about it. And we try to warn our clients that they're just going to get a bunch of complaints. And so that's one thing to kind of take into account. The other thing that happens is you don't know the person. So, for instance, the former Pope Francis, he had translators that translated for him in English, Spanish, and Italian all the time. Like this, well, English and Italian. I mean, obviously he spoke Spanish, but had someone who would translate back to him. Now, the translator for him usually sat right next to him and talked into his ear. But the other ones would be the translators. Day in, day out, they're doing this, and they understand what he means. From experience, I can tell you that if you have someone who doesn't know and he says something, he might say something like, he's trying to say that he was, he's old fashioned. He's not keeping up with everything, but how it came out was "I am a dinosaur." That's of course all of. If you do, the Pope says
that was
I'm
the
a dinosaur,
headline.
that becomes the headline, and it was just you're just kind of like, okay, there we go. So anyway, but you just have to try to use people, especially that if a person does this often, use the people who work with him often, or the folks that work with him often.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to bash automated captioning on things like YouTube. It's incredibly useful for a lot of people. I mean, I turn it on a good little bit myself when I'm just distracted and I want to be able to see topics going by. But it can be funny.
The reality is we're marching towards a future that is going to be, you're going to be able to tune into something. And it's available now. It's just that it's not a commercial product, but we're seeing this where you'll be able to watch your city council meeting in 60 languages in the next 2 years. Whatever language you want to watch the LA council meeting in, you can just turn it on. If you want to watch it in Khmer or in Hindu, or in Hindi, or in whatever those things are, you're going to be able to watch whatever that is in the language that you're there. Now, at first, it'll be dubbed. I wouldn't be surprised 5 years from now whether the lips are moving correctly with all their inflections, and it'll just feel like you're watching. But when we watched it on Star Trek, it seemed like such a crazy idea, but we're not really. We're just processor speed away from that happening right now.
Next question.
Next, we have a question from Ryan Ewell in Kigali, Rwanda. An Africa Digital Media Academy grad's company needs to quote a video podcast setup. Has cameras, tripods, lights, but needs audio, mics, arms, mixer, recorder, and video, switch, record, solution for 3 speakers, and tips for designing and building the set.
Alex?
So if it's a podcast, I would prioritize audio. I would prioritize your audio. So make sure that what I mean by that, when you design the set, there's a temptation. You want to make it look good for video, but what you really need to do is make sure it sounds good for audio. So, one of the things you want to think about is that, as you build, what room are you going to go into? You probably, want to be looking for with 3 people, it's really like a 15 by 18 meter. I'm sorry, not 15 by a 5 by 6 meter a room is kind of like the size that's probably the minimum size, and you'd probably do better with a more like a 8 like a 6 meter by 8 meter would probably be a better solution there. And so what you want to do is you have this box here. You're going to typically what we do is put a table in the center, and then we're going to have our 3 people. Now, usually what we do is we kind of plan for one person to be kind of offset, and that's going to be your moderator, and then the other 2 people are going to be over there. So you might have one person here. For us, it's a 3 camera. Typically, you have the camera, so we won't worry about that too much. But think about how you can keep these to look nice but be soft. The best ones that I've seen are ones where they basically set cloth away from the background, and you can design that cloth any way you want. A lot of them are darker, but you can do whatever you want there, but has some absorption there. You're not going to make it, without a lot of investment, you're not going to make it soundproof, but you can reduce a lot of the reflections to make that actually work well. We do like to use the, some kind of arms in the center. There's a lot, you'll see a lot of them. I think that Conan O'Brien right now, I think, has the best arms, but if you're looking for less expensive arms, the Elgatos are only $100 each. I'm using a OC White, which is about 3 times that much, or 3.5 times that much. But you want to get some arms out there underslung so that you have them there. As far as mics go, the typical thing to use is an SM7B, which is what I'm using right now. MV6s I'm sorry, not MV6s, but you want to use an MV7 plus or whatever if you're. You can go a little smaller. That gives you some flexibility that if you could go into USB or XLR, go back and forth. So that might be something to look at. But the SM7Bs are good. You could look at things that are larger diaphragm and so on and so forth, but that's going to pick up a lot of everybody else. What you need is mics that have a lot of off-axis rejection, so that they're not picking each other up while you're talking. So those are some of the things to think about there. A switch for a simple 3-camera shoot. To me, that feels very much like a ATEM switcher. To make that work, it's inexpensive. It's easy to use. You can just cut back and forth between those things. It can record, if you get the ISO version, it can record the ISOs itself. A lot of times we record the ISOs and, record from the cameras as well to make sure that we have a backup. We've been playing, we don't really depend much on the ATEM records, but we do them because if we're using Blackmagic cameras, they'll automatically, it'll start and stop the cameras if you have two-way communication with them. As far as a mixer goes, I have to admit that I still, for these kinds of records, especially having to do post, I have a tendency to lean towards sound devices because their preamps are so quiet. And so it gives me a lot to work with there. But, you may want to go to a Zoom F series, which is going to be a lot less expensive. But the mix pre's are the ones that I tend to, lean into for those types of things, for both a mixer and recorder. It just means that you can take the thing on the road. If you build something into a mixer, you're stuck there. You may find that they want to do a podcast in a hotel room, podcast somewhere else, and having the whole setup kind of something that you could take with you makes it a little bit easier. So those are my 2 cents.
Guy Cochran?
That was more than 2 cents, Alex. That was like 50
4
cents.
cents.
Yeah, you got a lot of it covered. If you watch some of your popular podcasters on YouTube, you can glean a lot of different, styles and looks. Like Alex mentioned, the SM7B seems to be a very popular microphone these days, and then it's just a matter of seeing, what the flow might be, depending on budget. If you want to go as far as something simple like a Rodecaster, or all the way up to Yamaha DM7. But as we get into the record side, Alex touched on it as well. I had pulled up that ability here because I've been playing with this as well, which is the ability to record in the ATEM extreme ISO. So when you're done, you get this kind of structure where you have program, and then you have a DaVinci Resolve file, and then you also have your video ISOs. What's cool about this is that they're all synced up. So if you open up that DaVinci project, you're going to see everything synced up. What I've been playing with is ISOing the extra hour show. So you can see over here, we have something with Mix Effect called video follows audio. So this is different than audio follows video. This would actually allow whoever's talking, you would be able to cut to their camera automatically, which is really cool. So I would look at the entire workflow of what you're doing and seriously consider this because it's really cool. You would have a program that's pretty much done by the end, and you could open it in Resolve and just do a couple little tweaks, because this allows you to say cut to this camera when the dB decibel levels are greater than this, and you could even have it change to a different camera, like a super source if you have the ATEM Extreme. So you can have it do these different super source actions. And so playing with our footage here, this is ISOs of the evening show that we do extra hours, and this is why I'm excited about this, is this ability to let anybody play with this. So this is actually running in a Zoom meeting where anybody will be able to cut this show 24 hours a day. If anybody's interested, you could ping me in Discord or something, and I'll give you an access to this. But it's really fun being able to see how you can cut these shows and how it can automatically cut, because that's a lot of work if you're doing this every day or multiple times a day to record all these people and then have to go in there and edit it and take out the uhs and ums. If you could open this after the show's done and you have 95% of your work done and you're just moving a couple little things, it's really cool. So I would say to look at the entire workflow end to end and not just be so caught up in spending money on any one portion, like getting carried away with the lights or the mixer. Look at the entire end to end workflow.
And don't forget, our content is driven by your questions. If you want to be a participant in that system, you can go to officehours.global/join. That's kind of the entry into the big back-end system. We'll send you an email within a day or two, and once you've done that, you can ask, vote on, and discuss the show's questions in our live show community. We gather every day to do this, and there's a robust discussion that takes place behind the scenes of everybody who's talking about the questions that we're talking about, so there's a lot more information there as well. That's officehours.global/join. Next question.
Greg Kadoki in Toronto, Canada asks the panel, does anyone have any good resources for teaching troubleshooting? I've always found the logical progression intuitive, but now have to try and teach others.
And Courtney Gooden's going to help us out. Courtney?
Well, it depends on the discipline which you're trying to troubleshoot. If is it mechanical? Is it architectural structure analysis? Is it signal processing? Is it signal chain? Is it electronics? Is it code troubleshooting? They all have different disciplines and different methods. There's a basic methodology that applies to almost all troubleshooting, which is, ask questions, find out what the trouble is, find out if it's consistent or intermittent, because intermittent trouble is one of the hardest things to troubleshoot. The other thing is to only change one variable at a time. There's like four steps, and divide and conquer, which is kind of what you're talking about, the logical progression. If it's a signal chain and signals going in one end and not coming out the other, you divide it. You divide it up into pieces, and some people like to troubleshoot by starting at the beginning and check for the signal at the first step and the second step and the third step of where that signal is passing through different devices or paths. Always check cables, but if you divide and then subdivide and then subdivide, in other words, divide it in half, do you have a signal at the halfway point? If you do, then go to the second half. And if you go from the second half to the end, do you have a signal there? And if it's being interrupted, then divide that signal path in half and check each half progressively from beginning to end, one at a time. Change only one variable at a time. So if you're going to change something, don't change two things at the same time. One of the most difficult things to troubleshoot is trouble in two different places simultaneously, like a bad cable and a bad connection. You may fix the cable and still have the bad connection, or you may fix the connection and you still have a bad cable, and you're still going to be without a signal on the other end. And there are various books out there that teach troubleshooting, but it depends strictly on the discipline that you're in, whether it's, coding, signal tracing, electronics. Look out there. There's a lot of resources on the internet of each of those disciplines and how to proceed with basic troubleshooting tips.
Alex.
Yeah, much of what Courtney said. I mean, I mostly reduce variables to the lowest number of variables that I can get it down to and still have it be operational. What I mean by that is, if I've got a signal flow, I don't really divide it. I start at the very beginning and go, does this work? Does the output from this work? Now I get to the other end of this. Does this work? And I just go along the chain to try to figure it out. Definitely very much agree with Courtney on one thing at a time. That's the biggest thing that we see people do, is I'm going to change 3 things at a time or 2 things at a time. And now you have no idea what's going on. Like like as soon as you start moving a bunch of variables at the same time, you're creating a calculus instead of addition, And so it's a much more complicated solution to make that actually happen. So, but I do agree that with Craig, I think for some of us, it does come very naturally. And probably you were fixing things when you were a kid. Like I think that there's something about doing it from when you're very young that it becomes very obvious the way to do it, and it's hard to put it into words what to do next.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said here. The divide and conquer works best for me only because I tend to work in time-based things like timelines of video edits. So for me, if I'm trying to load a past edit, thankfully this hasn't happened in a long time, but it fails to load, I will cut the timeline in half and say, does the first half load as a separate project? And if the answer is yes, then I know my problem, a toxic asset or something like that, is in the second half. Divide that in half and work on the quarters. And that way you can usually identify something in something like a time-based thing. But that's not the same process I would use to determine if a microphone PA system is ringing out from feedback. You have to start at the beginning and trace every signal that way. So it's contextual. That's my thought. Next question.
This one comes to us through the QR code from Raina Doppelpopoulos in Scituate. Would it be possible to import medical imaging data, CT or MRI scans, for example, into Unreal Engine? How do I get it, and in what format, and how do I get it in?
Nice question. Jason Bache, start us off here.
Okay, complex question here. So you're going to want to start with DICOM. The short answer is yes, it does work. You'll start with DICOM and use tools like a 3D slicer to convert to FBX or volume, depending upon what you end up wanting to do with it when you're in Unreal Engine. So if you've got a static anatomy model, .fbx, .obj, .stl, if you want interactive 3D scan navigation, it's almost certainly going to be a volume texture. Same deal with high detail mesh. But that I would do with FBX plus normals. So yes, the short answer is yes, it can be done, and you can import it, and it's going to be a touch and go thing. You're going to have to go back and forth to make sure, and it will depend upon what your finished product is going to end up being once you're actually in Unreal Engine.
Courtney Gooden.
Well, I've had to try and do this, but it's been a while since I've done it before because I've had to do it for TV shows, medical shows, and I've been able to bring in images from Siemens, MRIs, and CT. Almost all of these systems, if you have access to a scan, let's say your own personal data, because sharing this data is, maybe it's different where you're from. But here in America, we have these laws about sharing medical data. So you have to have permission from the person whose medical data you're using. But then if let's say I go get an MRI scan, I can ask the doctor for a copy of that scan. And they will usually give it to me on disk on a type of either, I guess, a thumb drive or a CD disk that usually has a player on it that is designed by the company that designed the MRI machine, so that they can give that disk and share that disk and archive that disk to other doctors. And that data has the player on the disk itself, and only that player can be used to play back that data. And so I would take that, load it into a computer, use the built-in player that is on the disk from whatever MRI machine created it, and just do screen grabs. That you can get 2D images off of that system if you put it onto a computer. I don't know whether, since a lot of the MRI machines are proprietary and they store things in their own format, getting it in the Unreal Engine may be difficult unless what Jason described maybe is something that's done more recently where they give you OBJ files. But usually that whole system is designed, including the playback viewer that the doctors use, is designed by the MRI machine manufacturer. So that may be difficult. Maybe they have a pathway into Unreal Engine these days. Maybe Jason knows more about that, or Alex does. But in my day, we used to have to do screen grabs of the individual scenes out of the player that is built in from the MRI machine manufacturer.
Alex?
Yeah, you should be able to use, I believe it's 3D Slicer. So 3D Slicer is the software that will convert DICOM to OBJ. And then once you're there, you should be able to get it in. Geometry is rough. You're going to have to do a lot of cleanup to make it actually work. It will convert it, but it won't. Not that I have been trying recently. so that's the one that I've been playing with a little bit.
Don't forget, we are having additional shows, and tonight, Monday, is the night for one of our special shows, Extra Hours. So if you're interested, 6 p.m. Pacific, translate that into your time and slip onto the same network. We also have a variety of others on Thursday. David Paskin does the rundown, and you can get all of this on the website information. Next question.
Paul Val, who's in Austin, Texas, is asking, how would I set up multiview for my ATEM Mini on my iPad?
Guy Cochran's going to help you out. Guy?
There's probably easier ways to do this, but I'll show you just how I do it, and I have it running on my iPad. So this is the multi-view out of my ATEM Extreme. So the way it works is the HDMI comes out, and it goes into this Zowie box, and then it gets converted to NDI HX, and then I pick it up, and anybody on this network can pick it up. The multi-view goes everywhere. It's a nice thing to have if you're working with a bunch of people that request multi-view. You could just give it to them that way. The other way would be to get something like this Axoon C mode. Depending on if you're tying up your HDMI out and you only have your USB out, you could go HDMI out into here, and then this converts it to USB-C, and then you can physically have a cable running in. So that's another way. The other way is to use Mix Effect and then add a new view. They call it a USB view, and again, you'd have to be cabled. But I like this solution because it allows it to go everywhere, and I'm completely wireless, and the picture is pristine. I mean, it looks amazing. It's so detailed. So on here, I'm running this Sienna NDI app to make the multi-view come through. But I mean, it's I'm sure you can't see it from there, but it looks pristine. Like every single one of those looks really, really good. So other people might have another way of doing it, but that's the way I do it.
Alex?
I think that you can I think you can use like something like an Elgato, little capture system into USB-C, and then just use Orion to see it. So I think Orion's a software that's there that will just open it up and show it. I think Orion's got a lot of other tools, but I think that that's one of the things that you could do as well.
Next question.
Next one's from the QR code. Shema Hervé in Kigali, Rwanda is asking, "Hi, during a recent 4-hour live stream using OBS, the stream froze about 3 times. Has anyone else experienced this kind of issue with OBS? Am I the only one, or is it a common problem? Any tips on how to handle or prevent this?"
Alex Lindsay's going to help you out here. Alex?
Yeah, we've all had that. So don't feel too bad, Shima. So, OBS is, it's a pretty common occurrence. Anytime you have software doing your compression, you got to make sure that you have tons of headroom. OBS on the Mac, if you're using a Mac, I don't know if you are or not, but if you're using a Mac, OBS is significantly less stable on the Mac. It's gotten better, but significantly less stable on the Mac than it is on the PC, because PC gamers are using it constantly and there's a lot more feedback. So I think that that's one thing. The second thing is that you really have to be careful with any kind of software system that is doing the edit as well as the compression. You have to pay a lot of attention to your CPU and GPU usage, and that should never go over 60%. And what your target should be when you're set up and you're looking at it, those should be running at 40% capacity. If you're running any higher than 40% before the show starts, you should be looking at how to reduce that load. If it goes over 60, you have a very high probability that things are going to start to spike and you're going to start losing frames. But, in general, most of the stuff that I do, if it matters, like if something matters and I'm getting paid for it, I have to admit that I move to hardware pretty quickly. That's pretty much how I, because I don't want to try to explain why the software didn't work. So I will, use, typically for me, Blackmagic switchers. I will use, hardware encoders. I mean, that's kind of how you keep reliability very, very high. Almost anybody I know that's used software to do this has had the experience of the computer overloading, because the software will let you ask the computer to do more than it is capable of. In hardware, it just kind of can do what it can do, typically. So it's more limited. You can't do all the cool things that you can do in the software, but it would be, but it also makes sure that you're reliable. So that might be something you want to think about. I know it's hard because it's very tempting. You got a laptop and, or a computer, and you want to go through it. If you are going to use software, my recommendation is to think about having it gets back into hardware, thinking of them as an appliance. One is doing the editing, another one's doing the encoding. And you may find that that's more stable.
Next question.
Next up is Tony Mobley in Noonan. Wanted to be on the panel today. Lawn service extremely loud. Besides Zoom, what technology would have cut noise?
We've all been into the lawnmower situation, I'm sure. Courtney Gooden's going to help you out. Courtney?
Well, there are a number of third-party noise assist. For example, if you have a later MixPre 3 or 6 or later or bigger, there's if you have an RTX board from NVIDIA in your computer, you can use, if you have that type of computer, you can use a program called broadcast audio filtration. Now, built into Zoom, I don't know if you were using it or not, but here's what I use, which is built into Zoom. Oops, sorry. Which is this. If you go into your audio settings, there's personalized audio. And you go down to your microphone settings and you turn on personalized audio solution and check that box, and you will have to record a voice print if you're using it for the first time. I've already set my voice print. I can delete my voice print, but one thing you want to do is make sure you're using the microphone that you will be using on the show at a level you would normally be using it at in the same chain, and don't change anything. And you can use the live performance. There's a beta, but once you record your voice print, then it will use that analysis of your voice print and try and filter out anything that isn't your voice. So it'll do a pretty decent job of removing spurious noises like, guys cutting the lawn outside or garbage trucks, which is what I use it for on Fridays. So it does a pretty good job of leaving your voice alone so that you don't have regular noise removal, which might remove parts of your voice as well and degrade your voice signal. It'll try and keep your voice signal as intact as possible while removing any extraneous noises, like sometimes the phone rings or
Alex.
A lot of hand waving and a lot of just going like this, just go out there and just be like,
gnashing of teeth.
Just this. This is the international signal for stop. Stop. I've done that with our folks a couple times.
I think I've been there for stopping. That's
fine. You can go through a lot of technology, but there's some analog ways of just like, hey, let's not do this right now.
There's the facial term glowering.
What's interesting is that they're growing. It's not here yet, but in other cities they're starting to outlaw gas powered blowers not for our shows, but for the fact that the gas ones make so much noise.
If we had caused the outlawing of those, we probably would have won a Nobel Prize from the community around us. Anyway, next question.
This one's from John Foltz in Sealands Grove, Pennsylvania, U.S. Now that Stream Deck has scissor keys as an option, what's the verdict on how they work? Better or not?
I don't know if anybody has one. Courtney, have you heard anything?
Well, remember when that Apple company went to the butterfly keyboard? How successful?
I do remember that. Oh my gosh.
What was that? It's a scissor type keyboard. The problem with the scissor type keyboard, it gives you a clicky feel, and it lets the button travel perpendicularly down without tilting. Where the original elastomeric keyboard is just like a transparent rubber, conductive rubber that you press your finger on the button and it presses the rubber down. It makes contact. So it can contact at any angle. So it doesn't matter what angle the button travels in. The scissor keyboard makes sure the button travels vertically. The problem with scissor keyboards is that they can get contaminated with crumbs and dust and detritus from if you eat on the surface where your Stream Decks are. Don't get cookie crumbs in it because they can clog up the system and prevent the mechanics of that little scissor from working, and that might create problems with you. So make sure you keep them clean. Keep crumbs and things away from them. And they should.
Wait! Nobody's ever eaten their lunch at the keyboard.
Nobody eats cookies while they're watching this show.
Never. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas is back with us. I'm looking for a sports score solution for making pickleball, bocce ball, and ultimate frisbee videos, and came across Scorecastr, which is free while it's in beta. Any good?
Alex, what do you think?
I don't know. It looks actually pretty good. If you look at it here, this is Scorecastr, and it has lets you have some basic designs to put those together. The real question is, if you're not the question is where you're getting the data. So if you're putting the data in manually, then you may be able to. This may be kind of built up to format it the way you need it to format. If you are, I would ping Tuomo also at SPX because he may already have. I know that a lot of sports folks use his as well, so that'd be something else to look at. But this looks pretty good. The question again is that are you going to try to interact? It sounds like the kind of stuff you're talking about. You're not interacting with an actual scoreboard. So if you're doing a scoreboard, there is interfaces that are required to make that scoreboard work, and so that's the part that you have to figure out. So if you do that, I don't know if this is going to work. If you're bringing it in from online sources, it looks like it could be reasonably good. So definitely test it out and let us know.
If you have questions you want to put in the show, there is a quick way. It's to use the QR code or simply type into your any browser, askofficehours.global. If you just type that in while you're watching the show or whatever, it'll put you in an instant queue. You can put in a question. It'll be vetted by the back end, and it can get in very quickly. So that is another system, an alternative. That is askofficehours.global to submit your questions to the show. Next question.
Here's Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York. Morning, everyone. Is there a program or app that allows the successful conversion of a PDF to a doc file without altering the formatting, images, or fonts on conversion? Already tried Acrobat and PDFElement to no avail.
Courtney, what are your suggestions? Oops, you're muted.
Had part of a screen off. No, sorry. It is working. I've tried a number of things. There's a couple of problems with this. Depends on what was used to create the document to begin with. Because the formatting, the layout, it may incorporate bitmaps. It may incorporate that don't even have fonts or text associated with it, unless it converts it using OCR to digital editable fonts. The best way to perfectly preserve the formatting is to make a docx file that just has an image from the PDF. And most of the PDF conversions can do that if they fail to be able to find the actual ASCII data in the PDF. And the formatting data is different. It depends on what machine made it. And if you can't do it in Acrobat itself from Adobe, it may not be able to be done by any of the third-party conversion software. Adobe makes an online version of Acrobat, full version of Acrobat, not just the reader, that will do conversions to docx. You may have to pay a fee for it or something, but there's an online version of converting from PDF to Word's docx format. But like I say, it depends on where the fonts that were used to create it. You may not have those fonts or comparable fonts on your machine that are going to match exactly, so that the font metrics, if the font metrics don't line up between the font that it substitutes and the font that was used, then the alignment of characters and justification and things like that may not line up correctly in your docx format. So it's a bit of a quandary.
Alex?
Yeah, and James Haldane in Mukana basically said that the Nitro Pro or Nitro for the PC works very well. So that might be something you want to look at.
Next question.
From the QR code, here's Jeremy Horn in San Francisco Bay Area, California, asking, I have a Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, 4K, that is missing a battery compartment door and will not power on. Is the battery door required even when powering from AC power supply? Thank you.
Alex? Mickey pointed out that he said, no, the battery door is not required for the camera to turn on. Test the power supply and is proving that it has the approved voltage. Also, test if an L-mount battery will power the camera. If it doesn't work, invest in a camera that's made by company manufacturers that makes reliable. There's the typical Mickey saltiness about the Blackmagic cameras. I haven't had that problem. It could be that the door. I'm just not sure if the door came off and maybe there's something damaged in there. But I've never had the problem where I've frequently not had the battery in my 6Ks. I haven't had a 4K and had no problem with it whatsoever. So I do think that it could be a voltage issue. There should be a little latch that holds. I guess the question for you also, Jeremy, is there's a little latch that holds the battery in. You should be able to take the Canon battery and push it up in there, and it should just pop in. And there's a little thumb latch there that should hold the battery in, and see if that actually works. I'm curious what happened to I guess the door was open and something went by it. so I'm very curious what happened to the door. Because the reason I say that is if the door was ripped off, there could be other damage that's there.
Yeah, it reminds me of my Canons. Back in the day, Canons used to not work unless the door was closed on the battery compartment, but I've never had that issue with the Blackmagic stuff that I use. So investigate further. Power shutoffs and things like that are complex. Sometimes the camera knows whether or not there's a dummy battery or something else in there. So it may not be getting a signal saying allow turn on because something is in a wrong state. Next question.
Brandon Doppelpopoulos in Situate is asking through the QR code. We have a classic 2-camera live stream setup, 2 cams with audio from Mixer into ATEM 2ME. And the client wants to add 2 commentators, 1 cam, 2 mics. Recommendations?
Alex, help him out.
I think it depends. That's our favorite answer to this question. I think that the question really is that, what kind of cameras are you already using? What are the mics? Do you have enough inputs on your mixer to take those extra inputs in? Is the mixer an analog mixer or a digital mixer? The reason for that is that, you may want to have them on there kind of a separate bus. If it's a small analog mixer, it may be more complicated than a digital mixer to build that out. So that may be something. Or do you do a submix where you give them another mixer and then have that show fed back to the main mixer? So those are things to kind of think about. there. So I guess I would try to match the cameras. I would always try to keep the same camera style or same make and model as much as you can together, just because it's a lot easier to get everything to sync up. One question is, will you ever see video from the other two cameras in that main camera? If you do, you have to make sure that you're able to color correct both of them at the same, all three of them together. If the one is in its own world, it just has to look good, so it doesn't have to match all the other cameras either. So those are some things to think about there. If you have an ATEM 2ME, you're going to have plenty of inputs. So, and if the other two cameras are Blackmagic cameras, I'd probably stick with the Blackmagic cameras and look at something that's there.
Next question.
Next up is Tony Mobley in Noonan. The ATEM was a game changer for me at the beginning of the pandemic. Are we now moving towards software switching for newbies?
Alex, what do you think?
Not typically. So typically, if someone asks, like, what can I get started with? I still kind of lean towards an ATEM Mini, just because it's simple, it's inexpensive. I don't know what kind of hardware they have, what kind of computers they have. If they are a little bit more technical, I think that's when I start to look at, well, you might want to look at these like on a Mac, Mimolive or Ecamm are good examples. On a PC, obviously you have vMix and OBS and others, and so it just depends on what they're, what they need to do. So I think that all of this depends on what someone has, what their computer can do. The biggest problem with software switching is usually not the software switching itself. It's that people put it on underpowered hardware that just can't keep up with what their requests that they're making. So a person beginning oftentimes is not going to have what they need. So that's something to think about.
Next question.
Ryan Ewell in Kigali, Rwanda asks, 2 colleagues and I have taken the plunge of 3 Google AI Ultra subscriptions. Want to test feasibility of using Flow, Veo, to replace some shots in content creation for budget reasons. Any suggestions where to start? How to organize our research group?
Alex?
I mean, the biggest thing that I would consider there is to really try to produce a real result. So you can play with ideas, but create a real mission that this is what I want to, like I'm going to pick up Veo here in this week, most likely. And I'm going to be trying to build a music video, a very specific one that I have a specific idea of what I want. I'm probably not going to succeed, but I'm going to spend the summer trying to do it, and spend a little bit of time on trying to. I'll use up my 82 clips or whatever every month to try to figure this out. At the end of it, I am not going to necessarily have what I was trying to get, but I will understand how it works. And that's been that's what I find useful, is just to kind of push up against that. But I can't do it typically if I'm just playing with ideas. I need to have an idea that I'm trying to produce, because that's really where, when we see all this cool stuff that people do, a lot of it's like they threw something in and something came back out again, and they're like, oh, that looks cool. But can you build something that makes sense from shot to shot to shot to shot over 3 or 4 minutes? And that's the part that I'm not sure if it's ready for, but that's what I want to find out.
Courtney Gooden?
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of speed lunking on Veo 3 and all the people that have been trying it out on the YouTubes. So one thing I would suggest is, if you're going to have these 3 people with you doing with the Ultra subscriptions, is don't waste your credits on experimentation very much. First, go on, get everybody together before you subscribe. Watch all the YouTube generators of the people that are doing tutorials on how to use the Ultra subscription. And make sure that you don't make the same mistakes that all the others have made. For one thing, I think in the current form, the Ultra subscription, it allows you to import a graphic to use as a reference, but then it uses Veo 2, which doesn't generate audio. So I've seen a lot of videos of people complaining, well, it doesn't seem to work. I brought in an image and I didn't get sound for some reason, but you find somebody else that says, oh, well, when you bring an image in, it only lets you use Veo 2, not Veo 3. And I think that's a guardrail to prevent you from making, bad videos of famous people saying things they shouldn't have said. So they limit you not using audio in VAIO 3 if you're bringing an image in for reference, because they don't want you bringing images of, they want to have control over the images that you bring in so that you're not using it for evil. But, so if you look at a lot of those tutorials that you'll find online on YouTube, have everybody together so that everybody sees the same tutorials and knows the same mistakes that everybody else made. So before you start using up those credits, making mistakes, know about the little pitfalls of the difference between VAIO 2 and VAIO 3 and audio generation. So you can pick up a lot of pointers there, and probably would help to have everybody in the same location so that you can instantly share your results and divide your work up into sections so that as long as you don't need any continuity between the scenes, into sections, and have each person use their credits to work on a specific section and get that refined and done. And then with a cut, then you can assemble those in post-production into a single video. But I've seen some very interesting and very funny short commercials produced with VAIO 3 that have dialogue that's completely believable, and completely believable humans in almost any situation. It even gets like man on the street interviews, people get excited, and it'll even generate distortion when the microphone goes into overmodulation. So the accuracy of its sound effects and vocal synthesis is quite amazing in VAIO 3. So good luck with that. And like I say, maybe you better have everybody in one location. You might have to use different IP addresses. I'm not sure how it handles credits, but I guess it's per account. So spend your credits wisely, my son.
This has been the most fascinating thing, the rise of these AI tools and how people approach them. What I'm keeping my eye on, it's just fascinating, is whether there becomes a VAIO look the same way there was a Midjourney look in the early days. They've evolved tremendously beyond that. But in the beginning, it was real interesting. And it reminded me of the old saw, when the tool you have is a hammer, every problem starts to look like a nail. If you're trying to create content and you're using the same tool that 100 million other people are constantly using this week to do the kind of thing, does everybody's work start looking somewhat similar? Now, the ideas behind them should be different, and maybe that's enough. Maybe good ideas will always win out. But this is an interesting and challenging time for the creative communities and for everybody else as we wrestle with this new stuff. It's fascinating, and we will always talk about it here and help you try to understand as we have today. Next question.
Here's a question from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Explain the use of these RK47 mic capsules, which might be the only ones that are not fake and which do not have an audibly incorrect frequency response, with a link.
Courtney.
Well, audibly incorrect, I don't know. This company, Mic Parts, that he's talking about, makes these replacements that are dual diaphragm RK47 capsules that are these large diaphragm capsules that are used in a lot of the U47 knockoff microphones that are made by like MXF and Rode and a variety of the Chinese manufacturers. I think I've got a couple of microphones that use these. This has a dual, a single grid for bias and then two diaphragms, one on each side, so it can be used in dual pattern microphones that'll give you a figure eight or a cardioid. And you can just use one of the diaphragms at a time. The difference that he's talking about is the frequency response that these guys are manufacturing. And a lot of the knockoffs of the U47s have this little peak down here that you see on the high end, which gives it a little more sparkle. I kind of like the peak because it's up there above 10,000. So if you're putting a foam windscreen on the microphone, that usually knocks out a lot of that high end and kind of takes the sparkle out of the microphone. What they do with this new capsule that these guys make is they give it a peak around at 8,000, somewhere in here. So it emphasizes, makes a little more clarity on the vocal side. And then they suppress the high end over here so that it doesn't have those high end transients, which some people like and some people don't like. And whether you call them fake or not, I don't know. It's just a difference in taste on the signal that you're listening to and how you're going to use that microphone, whether you're going to use it with some type of occlusive pop protection like a foam windscreen that surrounds the microphone, or just a pop filter that is a little more transparent.
This has been an ongoing debate in the whole world, and I agree. I think Courtney did an exceptional job of saying that a lot of the highly prized microphones from the ancient days are not necessarily flat. I remember once upon a time somebody told me Earthworks mics, the instrument measurement mics, were absolutely flat. So I tried to use one day for voiceover. It was horrible. It was just horrible. It just didn't sound good at all. And some of the microphones that are not flat sound good on certain voices. It's still, for me, going to always be a recipe. And I don't think taking a particular capsule and putting it in bad electronics or mediocre electronics or even two different forms of good electronics is going to make the difference. What will always make the difference for me is the performance of the person behind the mic. And I know I've been stuck in front of maybe 150 different kinds of mics over the 50 years I've been doing voiceover work. We got the spots done on all of them. They do sound a little bit different, and I appreciate the difference in microphones, but obsession on them, I've just learned to come away. Give me a mic and give me a month to get used to how to perform in front of it, and I'll get the job done every time. I don't care what the mic is. And I think most people who do a lot of this kind of work feel the same way. It's you that is the biggest variable, not the mic. Next question.
Coming in from Funsak Dorji. Hi, panelists. Please suggest rain protection covers for Sony PXW Z280s. Thanks.
Alex Lindsay's going to help you. Alex?
Yeah, you can probably find some relatively inexpensive ones on Amazon. This is about $75. But the ones that, you have a piece of electronics that probably matters to you. So I would really think about the Porta-Brace. This is the Porta-Brace. It's built for the Sony itself. And this is about $170 per camera. And it's going to, but I would just stick with the Porta-Brace is the one to use for that. After that, I would probably use a rain jacket or a garbage bag. I don't think that the other ones, because I'd rather be careful and have control over that. But I think the Porta-Brace is really the only great solution for that. But you can find less expensive ones. Just remember that, it might be a little bit leaky, and that's what you're trying to protect it from. Especially where you are, I think it's pretty. It's a lot of rain.
I'm going to support Alex on this. I've been using Porta-Brace cases specific to the cameras since the 1970s, and they have tons and tons and tons and tons of experience and know how to do it well. You can use other things. The only thing sad is that you always have to give up the Porta-Brace case because it fits that camera and nothing else unless you find somebody else with the same camera. There's nothing to do with it when you decide to retire the camera. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, Guy, that's a very interesting about recording a show on the ATEM. Have you had any experience with the Extreme ISO G2 model with Ethernet connectivity?
Guy Cochran?
No, I haven't, as that's still a pre-order item. But I will show you something kind of cool about what I was showing earlier, is that if you do those records and you want to look into that Strata app that we saw Michael do some demos of last Friday, the ATEM will show up on the network as an SMB share, and SMB shares can be picked up through Strata. So I could have somebody downloading ISOs instantly. It's crazy. And even as they grow, you could keep sucking down the downloads of the ISOs, either individuals or the program feed. So really cool stuff coming with all this, Strata and Blackmagic's new offerings.
Next question.
Pedro G. Gonzalez III from Jacksonville, Florida. How would one create a navigation app that spoke to you in a Jewish mother's voice style? Standalone app or plug-in for existing app?
Alex is going to handle this one.
I think that some services are starting to allow you to have, I think on the Android side, allow you to have map navigation where you can load the voice, but I don't think it's out on the iPhone yet. I probably do it as I don't think you'd be able to get into an existing app to change all the directions. So that would be the challenge.
I get weird when my wife changes her Siri component voice because I'm not used to it. There's some of that out there already. Good luck with it. Next question.
Next one's from Montez in Portland. Can you recommend a workflow that will get Sony 3D video.mts files in a format that I can view on the Apple Vision Pro or other 3D headset? I'm on a MacMini M1. Thank you.
Alex.
Yeah, there's two steps to this. You're not going to be able to get from the MTS to the MV HEVC directly. So what you want to do is look for it, and I think FFmpeg may do it. There's a couple other pieces of software that will do it, that you need to convert your MTS file to a side-by-side file. So SBS, so MTS to SBS. Once you have it in SBS, there are a variety of tools. If you do a search for it, I haven't had to do that for a little while, but I think that you can then convert from SBS side by side to the MVH EVC. I believe that Compressor may have added that recently, but I'm not 100% sure.
Jason?
Yeah, I've never done this, but my guess is that Make MKV will give you MVC 3D content from MTS, and then you get shutter encoder to go from SBS/TV to VR. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, Alex, that last Pro Video codec added that. So yeah, it may be simpler than this now.
Next question.
Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. is asking, is there any reason to prefer CF media over SD media when using Canon 5D Mark IV cameras?
Alex?
It's faster and more stable. so your CF cards they're gonna be able to. So if you're doing a lot, if you're firing off a lot of stuff very quickly, you will get to a point on most SD cards where you're going to suddenly buffer because but that's, you got to do a lot to get that far. But if you have a high res version, you may find that's the challenge there. But the CF cards are a more stable media structure than the SD cards.
Yeah, just physically, they're much wider and have much more contact points. So I think they do parallel bandwidth or something like that to download the photos. So exactly as Alex said, I tend to use the larger, more robust cards if ever I'm shooting with a lot of data going back and forth. Courtney, you had some thoughts?
Yeah, just make sure the speed rating on the cards that you're using. If you're doing 4K too, you want to use the CF card because it's usually at a higher speed and more reliable, like Alex said, than the SD cards. And there's so many counterfeit SD cards that are out there that say they're V60 rated, but they're not really. So make sure you use an approved brand and make sure it's not a counterfeit card if you are going to use the SD.
Next question.
Next is Craig McFarlane in Boston, Massachusetts. For managing Apple App Store subscriptions, do you know of a way to export data or a way easier than scrolling through a tiny dialog that doesn't allow copy text?
Jason Beige.
I'm pretty sure if you go into Safari and go to appleid.apple.com and then look at my subscriptions through there, you can highlight the text. But I know what you're talking about, and yeah, it's a big pain in the butt.
Alex?
Subscribe to less things. I just really look hard at what you're subscribing to. I don't have a very long list at this point. I did. And just really think about whether those are. What I tend to do is I subscribe to stuff, and then the day after it, I put a little reminder in my channel, and I cancel the subscription. This is why I'm so against third-party, purchasing. Is because in Apple, what I do is I just immediately say I want to cancel the subscription the day after I subscribed. If I forget about it, it just drops off. like if I forget about that app, if I don't use it or whatever, if it says, hey, your subscription's ending, then I go, oh, okay, I'll turn it back on because I'm using it. But that has been saved me hundreds of dollars a year. It's just a constantly just turn things off.
Yeah, opt out versus opt in is a big deal. Next question.
This one's from me based on a conversation in the Mukana earlier. Guy, your mic sounds different today. Have you made changes to your setup?
Guy, what's the story?
Yeah, so earlier today I was experimenting with the Paul's question, trying to push the NDI feed in, which had this audio that was very hot. And I think that Zoom kind of freaked out because the audio was too hot coming in. And so it somehow clamped down on my signal because I did a restart on my MixPre and reset the vMix audio input. And Mickey's been working with me on the back end to adjust some Windows settings, but none of it seems to have worked. I probably need to restart the whole system, and I didn't want to dump out of Zoom and come back into the show during the show because it blacks out the multi-viewer. So apologies. I'm not sure.
No, thank you. Exactly. Rather have you here than experimenting. So we'll take you with the mic you got. Next question.
Here's Brian Taylor in Washington, D.C. Has Alex received his SnappyLense iPhone attachment yet? Verdict?
Alex.
I have. Here it is. So here it is. It's there. I got it. As to do what it says it can do, It absolutely works. It is the cool thing about it is by having this here, you can use your 48 megapixel on your iPhone, or you can use your 0.5 to take pictures, and you can actually see what it looks like. We talked a lot more about this on Sunday. So this is the one. This is the snappy one. The one thing that I realized, I was trying to order the small rig one, and somehow was doing it so quickly that I ordered a different one, which turned out to be the snappy one from Amazon. So if you buy the the Snappy lens, I got one that was gray, but exactly the same. This is Chinese. Snappy just took a Chinese figured this out. Snappy is branding it. But if you order it from Snappy, you'll wait 2 weeks. If you order from Amazon, you'll wait 1 day. And so by some other company's name, but it's the same thing. Now, as a photo thing, it works great. It does the thing that it needs to do. I'm still trying to get it to work with Zoom. Zoom keeps on rotating in a way that doesn't make sense, and so I'm going to try to lock it and figure it out. And so, and Brian Taylor said he ordered his, and what I did is I had ordered on Amazon. I ordered mine, I think someone brought it up on Saturday, and so I ordered it on Saturday, and I got it on Now I'm sending it back because I ordered the wrong one. But I did order the small rig one, which should be here later this week. Small rig one looks dramatically better, like when I looked at it in detail. But this is the one that I ended up ordering, and this is by Desron, and this is less expensive than the Snappy one, and it gets to you in a day, and it is exactly, other than being gray, it is exactly the same piece of hardware. It literally shows up as the same share name on the thing. So if you want to save some money and time, this is $60 instead of the $80 or whatever it is that I spent with Snappy, which you'll never get back because you can't return it because it's like some crazy into Chinese. So anyway, and Craig says that the Snappy lens is a bit higher resolution, the small rig. For what I'm using it for, I'm not sure if I need it, but we'll look at both of them. I'll have both of them here because I don't think I can send the Snappy back. So I'll have both of them here hopefully by this time next week. So if you ask next Monday, I should have an answer.
Supply chain is really weird out there right now.
Well, they send you this thing, and then of course it's nice because it does tell you like all the different. I know all the places that went through China to get to me. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm seeing. I ordered a silly little mount for my phone in the car, and it was in Tajikistan and God knows where. That just seems like global supply chain is still not really recovered from all the tariff kerfuffle yet at all. So be wary of that. Hey, thank you all for watching today and for your questions. Our producers, as always, have really stepped up your game and came today with everything, and we appreciate it. So producers, thank you very much. For the panelists who come here and answer the questions, thank you, everyone and all. And our amazing back-end crew, without whom this show does not end up on the air every day, and we hope you enjoy and appreciate and hopefully benefit from what we do here every day. The Tlock Traversal, that is 66,000 miles today, 106,000 kilometers. That is 519 million bananas for scale. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow doing the same thing. Bye-bye.
I opened it up and I was like, this looks exactly like the other one. And I realized that the two of them were sitting next to each other. We were on the show when I ordered it. And I think I just clicked the wrong one.
Did they use the same app? Like, is it that identical?
The one that I just showed is literally the same. I mean, it's identical except for being gray. It comes in the same box. Like when I opened it up,
so it's just a straight up white label.
I mean, literally
probably in the same factory. Yeah, right.
It's white on the outside. I mean, literally everything is the same about it except for the cost.
Except for the name brand
less
on the top.
expensive and faster.
And that little part, I'm sitting there going, why did it go from China to Tajikistan?
Exactly.
What the heck is going on out there? And
there was a flight to get there, and they were like, hey, let's just put it on.
Yeah, well, let's go from there to there to there, and then we'll finally get where we want.